Thank you, Rick. Good afternoon, colleagues. We'll come to order at 3:07. We have a pretty full agenda today. Um, the first item on our agenda, of course, is approval of the agenda. Colleagues, are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. The next item on our agenda is approval of the February 22, 2022 meeting minutes. Are there any corrections or changes? If there are no corrections or changes, then the minutes are approved. The third item on our agenda is the President's report from President Stokes. President Stokes was presented today at the Regents meeting. There's a lot of good information out there today. President Stokes?
Thank you, Finney, and good to see everyone. I hope everyone those who were able to take advantage of a spring break. I hope it turned out to be a really good one. Yes, the biggest thing today was we had a presentation to the Board of Regents related to really the information we need to plan for a full budget that ends up going to the board for approval in May. And the big items have to do with the planning around tuition and the planning around compensation. And so I gave a report on something about the legislative appropriations and talked about the kind of increased funding that we'd received. We were pretty flat for research and public service projects, but did get about a 3% increase in our I&G funding from the legislature. We had definitely some RPSPs that are on the health sciences side that received significant funding. They included Project ECHO, OMI, expansion of advanced practice nursing. We also received funding for additional space on our nursing and population health building, support for the HPV registry, the Office of Medical Investigator, and Native American faculty and student support funding. And then one of the big things out of the legislature was the funding for a school of public health for $10 million to be spent over 2 years. And I'll come back to that in a moment. We did have a junior bill that was vetoed, but we lost about $3.7 million in funding for different kinds of projects across the institution. But the special session might bring back some of that funding. The big issue, of course, out of the legislature was the push for really a 3% raise beginning April 1st for the end of this quarter of this current fiscal year, followed by a 4% average increase beginning July 1st. Now, I think many of you may or may not be aware that there's a formula by which they calculate the pool of funds we receive from the state to support our compensation increases. We're one of those types of institutions or agencies that have the opportunity to get revenue from elsewhere, so they don't give us 100% of the funding. That's true for branches and for central campus, and it's even a bigger issue for the health sciences. So the cost of a compensation increase of about 7% is around $44 million, and we receive about $21 million. But what I want to share is that we went forward with a compensation increase of 7.12%. That's the 3% for April, May, and June, and then an average of 4 for beginning July 1st, and are looking at the ways to build in the funding for that. That's an especially difficult situation for our School of Medicine and Health Sciences. If you happen to be at the Regents meeting, there was a long discussion about why that's the case. But I think that what's important to know is that we've known that compensation is a major, major issue for the University of New Mexico. And so, you know, we made a commitment that we would do that 7.12%. And so there'll be more details about that. And of course, for any unions, there's always a negotiation related to compensation, but the board was really unanimous in its support for that compensation increase. And in addition, we are removing a discount that has existed for some time on tuition, and we're also raising tuition by 3%, and that was approved today. I'm sure the provost is going to talk a little more, perhaps, about the things that came through the budget leadership team as priorities for funding. You know, there's well, I'll let him share what those priorities are, in addition to compensation, which was clearly a very, very high priority for us. So we'll be working on those budgets over the next few months. Another thing I wanted to come back to was the School of Public Health. Many of you are aware, I'm sure, that we have a College of Population Health. And with the right investments, that College of Population Health can build out to become a fully accredited School of Public Health. And so that was a lot of conversation during the last few months. The funding was put in place to be able to start building that out. I have created an executive council that will help shape what that school will look like. We're also working directly with the legislature on additional funding, out after 2 years. And I don't want to take away from any of the other priorities that are out there. We've got a lot of them. But this is a reason to focus on this. This is something quite different than what we talked about, for maybe my first couple of years. And it is truly what I am considering a one campus project. Members of the Executive Council are equally balanced pretty much between health sciences and the central campus. Public health is actually not just a healthcare issue. It's there are many avenues, many parts of public health that are really informed by fields like sociology, engineering, psychology, and many others. I mean, so I think this can be an exciting project for us, and there'll be a lot more for us to talk about going forward as we really begin to pursue our 2040 planning and the goals that were set as part of our 2040 planning, focusing on educational innovation and student experience, advancing New Mexico equity and inclusion, sustainability, including sustainability of our environment, and then the One University, really working together to be able to be more effective and having greater impact as we work together on a whole lot of fronts. So with that, here we are right after spring break, and I'm already looking ahead toward commencement. This is often a very, very busy time of year on campus. It's an exciting time for students. But I know we're all going to be, and I know you're all going to be extremely busy in the weeks to come. So just want to say thanks for all the work that I know that you are doing and all the ways that you're supporting the mission of the institution. Finney, I think that often we turn it over to James and then take questions. If you'd like to do that way, again, I'm happy to be here and wait for that opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you. Unless there's a pressing question, Provost Holloway.
Thank you, Finney, and thank you all for the time today. Rick, can I share screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm just going to share a couple of slides from the presentation that the team gave this morning, just to kind of give people a big picture. I won't hit them all. It's a very long deck, but let me do that. So the first slide that I'm sharing here is actually the kind of overview of the HSC academic enterprise and the primary assumptions that they asked the regions to consider. And I'll come back into the tuition and related questions from HSC in a minute. But as President Stokes suggested, the biggest challenge for HSC is associated with the first expense that's listed here in the bottom set of stanzas, and that's the funding necessary to cover the 3%, then 4% salary for faculty. That's about a $20 million unmet need for HSC. HSC School of Medicine just used the School of Medicine about 0.8% of their revenue comes from tuition, about 20% from contracts and grants, about 9% from the state. So it's the 70% on ING funding that the state provides to HSC is fairly small in terms of the total needs that they have. Other needs that need to be covered in HSC is increase in group health insurance. The state required us to increase our contribution, the university's contribution to ERB, but didn't fully fund that. Then there are utilities, and what HSC is planning to do, given this very large funding need to make up salary compensation increases, is at least delay implementation of new initiatives through January to kind of see where they land. Yeah, here's the picture of kind of just for the School of Medicine, where does funding come from? Tuition 0.8%, the top of the cranium there, 9% state funding, sorry, 10% grants and contracts. I said that wrong a minute ago, 80% clinical. And so when they do a compensation increase based on just state funding, which doesn't cover the total, it actually hits the other mission areas in a fairly significant way. And so they're being fairly conservative in the new initiatives, new activities that they're funding. Let me flip then back up to main campus, kind of big picture, central campus picture. So central campus, through the budget leadership team process, identified about 40 million in needs. Those are comprised of a shortfall in recurring revenues from last academic year, the need for about $16 million to do the 3%, then 4% compensation increase. About $7 million in what we call must funds. These are things like group health insurance increases, the unfunded part of the ERB, utilities, growing expenses in utilities. We also identified about 14.7 million in strategic needs. These are the things I talked about at the January Faculty Senate meeting when I presented the academic affairs priorities for the upcoming fiscal year, which included things like the compensation increase, need for strategic funds for strategic research areas to hire faculty in strategic areas and so on. So that's within that 14.7 to make this total of 40 million in new financial needs for central campus. The state's providing about 23 million in new sources. That's the 3% ING increase, the funding for compensation, and partial funding for the ERB. That left about 17 million in unmet needs that we need to make up. And so the proposal that we presented to the regents today was a tuition increase and a restructuring of tuition. I want to say a little bit about tuition. And so the picture I'm showing here, and again, these are in the regents ebook that will be a part of their minutes once those are approved. We currently have 6 different basic tuition models, depending on whether you're resident or non-resident, undergrad, graduate, or graduate professional. It's a bit of a confused mess. They all look kind of different. Some have discounts, some have premiums. So we proposed to the regents that we reduce those to two models, the two different colors here. Undergrad resident, which will have tuition going flat at 15 credit hours without any kind of a discount. And then all other categories, non-resident undergrad and all graduate and graduate professional, a tuition rate that goes flat at 12 credit hours with no discount or premium. What we actually do right now for undergrad non-residents is we charge them extra to take the 13th credit hour. And you know, there's historical reasons for that, but there it is. So we're really trying to simplify tuition. And on top of that, then we're proposing some tuition increases. And so the full set of requests that we put to the regents that I'll show here, we recommended to the regents that we do the 3% compensation increase for the fourth quarter of fiscal 22, the 4% average increase for fiscal 23. And I know there's a question in the chat about that. We'll come back to that. So 3% for the fourth quarter starting April 1st, 4% for the next fiscal year starting July 1st. Also 1% increase in mandatory student fees, a $15 increase in the ASU&M fee. The tuition simplification that I just described, along with a 3% increase in undergraduate resident tuition, a 3% increase in graduate resident tuition, and a 5% increase in undergrad and graduate non-resident tuition. These are in line with what other institutions in the state are doing. NMSU and Tech have not approved their tuition increases yet, so far as we know, but informal discussions tell us that they're in the same kind of neighborhood. So we're maintaining our tuition, basic tuition rates in kind of the same neighborhood as the other research universities. HSC is going with slightly smaller tuition increases, 1% base for undergrad and graduate resident, 3% for non-resident. A key driver for that in HSC is that tuition is really not a major proportion of the revenue stream for HSC. That's especially true in medicine, where it's a very small fraction, as you've seen, 0.8%. And so the drivers are different. In addition, several of the HSC schools already have very large differentials. So nursing, for example, the differential is on the order of 70% of base tuition, so it's really quite significant. And so small increases in the base rates don't really have don't move the needle in a significant way, because they already have that large differential tuition as well. So those are the basic recommendations for Central Campus. For the branch campuses, 3 of the campuses are not recommending any tuition. That's contingent on their advisory boards approving. I should say they are recommending tuition, no tuition increases. UNM Taos is planning a small tuition increase from $78 to $81 per credit, and a increase in student fees to cover some new services that they've put in place during the pandemic that seem like they're really successful. Now I know that there's questions about the compensation program in the chat, and this has been a set of there's been a lot of interest in this. So let me kind of just tell folks where we are on that. So the 3% increase starting April 1, we're starting to implement for that wasn't me. The 3% increase.
Well, I mean,
someone's not muted.
Yeah. It's
She's muted.
Okay, got it. All right. So the 3% increase we've started to implement for non-unionized faculty and staff. The 3% increase, we have also reached out to the several, for unionized faculty, we have to have a discussion about that with the unions, for unionized faculty and staff. we have to negotiate this with the unions. So we have reached out to all of the unions to propose that we do the 3% increase effective April 1st. Then, really we're in a kind of interesting place this year. The state legislature approved 2 raises, a 3% in April and a 4% average in July. So we're trying to get the 3% done now because it's the most pressing in terms of time. And so for the non-unionized folks moving forward with that, for the unionized folks reaching out and trying to work with the various unions to get that approved. I think for the staff unions, some of those seem to be, I think, are being signed today. There's still some discussion to have, but in any event, that's moving apace. And then we need to similarly have an implementation of the 4% for July 1. We're putting on a memo today, tomorrow for out of HR that describes the process for our non-unionized staff for the 4% increase. And what that memo says is that 2%, everyone should get 2%, and then folks can have an additional 2% or more depending on the analysis of individual units. And some units don't really want that flexibility. They just want to do everyone at the 4%. Some units actually want to either look at merit with that 2% or look at additional funding sources they may have beyond the funding that we're providing centrally to recognize particularly meritorious staff. With the unionized faculty, we again have to have a discussion with UA-UNM about how that July increase will be deployed. And so that's a conversation that is yet to be had. So that's kind of where we are on implementing the compensation increases. And so to answer then Vladimir's question, what does average mean? So for the non-unionized staff, there's an opportunity unit by unit for units to decide that they want to use some of that 4% to do merit or not, as long as they hit that average of 4%. For unionized staff and faculty, it's a matter of conversation with the appropriate unions. And President Stokes, I think I've hit those key points. Let me know if I missed anything.
Good. Are you ready for questions, James?
I am.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So I imagine we do have some questions. I think for me, if I can go first, there are two questions about compensation that I have for you. One is there's some communication that suggests that the university or that the provost office only came back to the union with a 3% increase, and if I use the language from the that it seems that the provost office seems to be backtracking. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, so thanks for the question, Finney. It was asked this morning in the Regents meeting as well. And so I'll address that in a couple of ways. So first, I'll point folks back to the minutes of the January Faculty Senate meeting in which you will see our presentation of our budget proposals, which include academic affairs endorsement of doing the 3% and the 4%. So I'll point to that, kind of that being our position. And I think we've been pretty consistent in that in BLT meetings with the legislature starting last summer, in the STAR meetings where we presented budgets as well. Where we are in the process of implementing that is we have offered a memorandum of agreement to the staff unions and to the faculty union regarding the 3% to be implemented in April 1st. That is independent of the discussions and equivalent memorandum of agreement we would offer to those unions, staff and faculty unions, to implement the 4% in starting July 1st. And so what we've offered is those two things separated because the April 1st deadline is quite pressing, and the July 1st is 3 months away. So we have more time to work with the unions on that. And again, the language that the legislature offered and that the governor signed, the 3% in April is easy. It says 3% across the board. The 4% in July is more subtle because it says an average of 4%. So there's more to discuss regarding that 4% than the 3%. Our plan, our intention is to implement those things. And in fact, we have implemented those things for the non-unionized staff, as well as for the non-unionized faculty, most of whom are in HSC. That's being implemented now. So we've already done it for actually the largest, the majority of employees at UNM. What we have to do with the unionized faculty and the unionized staff is, again, with each of the unions we first offered, let's get the April 1 thing done, and then let's take care of the July compensation increase. So that's where it sits from my perspective.
Okay, so the second question has to do with the word average. So how average has meted out so far is that the folk who've already received this, it's been 4% across the board. It hasn't been couched in the language of merit where someone might get 2 and another person might get 6. But that has how it's meted out so far, from what I understand. Is it academic affairs expectation that this would be a 4% across the board raise?
So let me separate some different groups. So one, it had, implementing it at the level of, we're doing the back office work to implement it is one thing. That doesn't mean anyone's receiving it yet. It won't happen until April 1st and July 1st, respectively. The staff proposal, or the staff memo that's going out, says everybody gets 3% April 1st. And then July 1st, everyone gets 2%, and units can individual units can decide how to distribute that additional 2% of compensation increase. And how units do that isn't specified in that memo. So it could well be for merit, it could be for equity, or for other reasons, other challenges that units need to address. So in that model, individual staff could get the 3%, then a 2% plus something else that requires units to justify why they would give someone above the 4%. With the faculty, with the HSC faculty, my understanding is, and others would have better knowledge of this, with the non-unionized faculty, I believe they're doing it as a 3% and a 4%. With the unionized faculty, that's a question, it's a conversation for us with ASUNM, I'm sorry, with UAUNM, to determine what that should be. And again, we've offered the memorandum of to do April 1st, since that's pressing, and look forward to discussions about how we should implement the July 1st increase.
Okay. Okay, I want to press you a little bit on that. So with, this doesn't mean then that academic affairs would go back to deans or go back to academic units and say, oh, you have an option of 2% or, 1% or 0%, and, other people can have 6 or 8%. What I think I hear you saying is, at this point, it's a negotiation with the union about about how the 4% would be spread. That this would not then devolve back to the academic units to make some kind of decision in the way that staff is able to fracture that raise.
Yeah, in the case of employees represented by a union, compensation is a matter of bargaining with the union. And so that's the process by which we would determine, should it be 4% for everybody? Should there be a merit structure to that? Should there not? One of the other issues that's ongoing right now is we feel very strongly that the negotiations with UA-UNM need to be undertaken in a closed environment. That's what the PEBA says, literally. Case law supports that. And so one thing I'm trying to be very careful not to do is to negotiate in this forum what should be negotiated in a closed forum with UA-UNM. But your analysis, Finney, is correct. How we deploy that 4% for our faculty represented by a union, and by the way, for our staff represented by a union, is a matter for negotiation discussion with the respective unions.
Got it. Colleagues, any other questions for President Stokes or Provost Holloway? If you raise your hand, Heather, thank you.
Hello, I have a question. I've been told that faculty are not allowed to be present at negotiations. Nobody can view these negotiations over salary. Is this true?
Yeah, this is correct. And so the folks who can be there are the members of the designated bargaining teams. And again, there's a legal reason for that, and there's a practical reason for that. The legal reason is that the Public Employees Bargaining Act says bargaining will take place in closed sessions, and case law says that means confidential sessions. And so there's the case law reason. There's also the negotiating reason, which is that it is actually usually easier to reach a good conclusion when you don't have an audience. And I'm not particularly interested in putting the folks who negotiate for UNM kind of in a fishbowl that will make their work harder. And frankly, I think make a quick outcome for faculty less likely.
Asbjorn?
Yeah, thank you. So I'd like to remind President Stokes and Provost Holloway that the current inflation rate for the US is around 7.5%, depending on how you measure it, depending on what's included. And so a 7% raise, if we're getting the whole amount of that, would actually be potentially a small pay cut in terms of buying power. And the dividing of the 4% in July, if we get that whole 4%, essentially amounts to how much of a pay cut some people will get if they get below that 4%. And I remember with the planning back in September or August, when you first presented this, it was actually fairly ambitious to ask for about 5% or more from the legislature when the inflation rate was a lot lower, which would actually be something that would have caught us up a bit to where we have been from past losses. And my question to you is, what do you plan to do to try to get, I guess, more money for the faculty and to really try to make up for some of this territory that's been lost?
We have talked about this. It's just incredible what has happened. It seemed very aggressive. I think we really wanted to ask for 10% increases, 7%. It was really amazing to see that we were going to get that support. And then you're right. That's exactly what's happened. We are expecting to be at least as aggressive in the next legislative session. We have talked with our board. We have been talking with the Legislative Finance Committee and members of the legislature. We are finally getting real traction on the importance of salary increases in higher education. So, you can expect us to be really pushing for significant increases going forward. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm no expert on inflation. At one point, not too long ago, this appeared to be perhaps a temporary increase, and now we've got seeming uncertainty about what that looks like. But I think I I really think we've got the beginning of a great conversation with members of the legislature that we can benefit from in this next 60-day session.
And I'll add to this that, as we're in exactly the same place you are in terms of that analysis. And when we started this last summer, we spent a fair bit of time talking to members of the legislature and the legislative staff about faculty compensation, and particularly for the research universities, the importance of faculty compensation, because environment than some of the other institutions in the state. I do think we got traction on that, and that was understood, which is kind of why we got where we got. But then, as you're absolutely right, it doesn't really keep pace in the way we need it to. We do have two levers to work on, and we're working on both of them. One is continuing similar kinds of compensation increases. And we presented as the Council for University Presidents, as part of that, we, NMSU and Tech, presented to the legislature the total needs to get compensation to where it needs to be, so that they would understand, with a 7% that they were proposing, how far short that would fall, even in the sort of $2021 that they were looking at the time. So they have seen the whole need. That's important. It gives us the ability to build on that. And we do then have two levers. One is to, again, with the existing surpluses, which are likely to continue, at least for a couple of years, to continue to build that percentage increase, the 3%, the 4%, whether it's a combination or one big jump. But then also the amount that they actually fund. Because right now the higher education is funded at 75%, public education at 100%. The judiciary is funded 80 to 90%. The executive is funded 55%. But that's the other lever that we've been pushing on, is to get them to fund not 70%, which actually makes little sense to us, but fund 100%. That would also give us more room, because our other lever is tuition.
And there's about better than $600,000 in the budget for equity, other types of adjustments. Can you say a little bit about how that will be used?
Yeah, let me talk about that. So that's the 600, I think it's 630,000 that Finney is referring to, is a pool of funds that I started to build when I got here, because we had no pool. When a faculty member got an offer to go somewhere else, we had no pool to go to say, wait a minute, no, we want to try and retain you. When we did try and retain someone, that frequently created equity issues. We had no pool to go to say, wait a minute, we need to actually adjust 5 salaries in that department to retain this one colleague. Equally, we had no pool to go to when we tried to hire a new faculty member, and they had a partner. And that partner is looking for a position as well. And so that 630,000 is used to address retentions, which frequently produce equity issues. It's used to address partner hires. This last year as well, at the start of the fiscal year, individual schools and colleges and deans presented to us arguments for equity adjustments within their departments, or within their schools and colleges. Those were always adjustments they had previously looked for that we didn't have funds for. And so coming into the last fiscal year, we had some funds to do it. We can anticipate the same thing here. However, when looking at that budget, we need to remember that budget with the 630,000 is not fully funded. And so that set of requests of 14.7 million was our total set of requests. With the revenue that the state is giving us and the new revenue from tuition that the regents have just approved, we'll only be able to fund about 74% of that, something like that. And so we still actually have to go back and sharpen our pencils and figure out which of those pools of funds can we, we're going to have to redo that entire set of strategic requests that come from academic affairs, the president's units, and facilities and finance in light of the budget revenue streams that the regents have just approved.
I do want to mention, though, that at today's meeting, there was something brought up by a board member about the possibility of maybe filling some of those requests that we don't have sufficient funding for from funding that's available from a Regents endowment. I don't know for sure what that will look like or how much money it will be, but we will be examining what we might, take to the board in that regard to help fund some of the unmet needs identified by the budget leadership team.
Yeah, and we did a little brainstorming on that today, and there's two things they're putting on the table there. One is endowment returns, which is recurring, but the other is the endowment corpus itself, which is a much more substantial amount of money, but is not recurring. And so we may be trying to think about, are there recurring needs that we instead fund through a one-time source in anticipation of in the future looking for other ways to fund them on a recurring basis. That's a delicate dance.
Yes, it is delicate, but I did want to bring up that the regents were sufficiently supportive of the kinds of things that we said were really important for the institution, and we're looking for other solutions.
Okay. Chris?
Thanks, Finney. First of all, I wanted to thank Vladimir for his comment in the chat, because I wholeheartedly agree that faculty members who are not currently associated with UA UNM, those who are eligible, I would invite you to join if you haven't already, because I want to make clear that, of course, the legislators did not, out of the goodness of their hearts, even though I know a lot of them have good hearts, allocate the 7% raise to faculty and include UNM faculty in that pay raise for public educators. It was our parent union, American Federation of Teachers. When we pay dues to UA UNM, a percentage of those dues go to American Federation of Teachers. It was the American Federation of Teachers that got teachers the 7% raise in the state of New Mexico. So I think that's something important to remember. So I think that's why so many faculty get upset when they hear discussions of 4% average, when we have fought for 7% allocation to faculty across the board, 7% across the board, not dependent on merit. We're also concerned by the fact that an individual out of the provost's office has been presenting information to the deans, who have then been passing information on to faculty, that faculty will receive the 3% raise and the other 4% will be left for merit. That's also problematic because, as Provost Holloway has mentioned himself, that for unionized faculty, those decisions have to be negotiated by the union and the provost's negotiating team. So it's frustrating when administrators at the college and department levels start sharing information that actually isn't necessarily true. I also want to say that the reason why non-unionized faculty and staff are already guaranteed their 3%, while those of us who are unionized are not, that is because the non-unionized faculty and staff don't have anyone fighting for them. The reason why we haven't agreed with admin on the 3% is because we're fighting for the 7%. And it's too bad that we had agreed to 3 dates during spring break. Mind you, admin's team is paid for the work that they do in negotiating with the union. We faculty are all volunteer. We all do this on our own time and are not paid for it. Despite this, we agreed to 3 bargaining dates during the spring break. Admin canceled all of those dates and has refused to negotiate with us. Now, the date they've given us is at the end of March, which you know is problematic if we're trying to get things approved by April 1st. So I just want to, I want there to be more transparency about why things are the way they are in this moment, because it does not come across in these conversations, in these reports to the Faculty Senate, in these reports to the Board of Regents. So if UNM admin is serious about working with those of us who actually worked hard to get this 7%, then I invite admin to join our team to sit at the table. And I know Provost Holloway, I of course am not an expert on case law, but it's my understanding that what PIBA says is that those negotiations cannot be public. So what we have agreed to do is, in addition to our negotiation team being present at these bargaining meetings, is to provide admin with a list of our members who are not the public, our members who would be present. So, I have seen over the last 2 years, as somebody sitting at the bargaining table, admin stall and make this so problematic for faculty. All we want to do is shine some light on how those negotiations go. And it's true, it does not benefit admin at all to have light shown on those negotiations, but it sure does for the union.
Thanks, Chris. And I realize you weren't asking a question, but I'll make some comment anyway. So when PIBA actually uses the word closed, it doesn't use the word public. Case law has established what that means, and it means closed and confidential. And there are good reasons for that. We have to, when you negotiate when 2 groups negotiate, they have to agree not only on the matters at hand, they also have to agree on the form of negotiation and how that will take place and when that will take place. And we don't agree with UA-UNM that negotiations should take place with an audience.
Any other questions, colleagues? Rebecca?
I have a question, and you may not be able to answer it. Because HSC is separate, and you did discuss that we have a little bit of a larger challenge ahead of us to be able to create that revenue. If I recall correctly, seeing that slide that you had with the person with the different rates of reimbursement, the biggest being clinical for revenue, but there was a disclaimer at the bottom saying it's hard to generate revenue from the clinical aspect. I was just curious if there is a recommendation of where one would create the revenue to meet the need of a 7% raise on the HSC.
Yeah, actually, Rebecca, it's a great question. The most important answer is a hospital tower. And so the way you grow clinical revenue is by growing volume. And that's been the goal of one of the goals of the hospital tower. Of course, it helps us take care of more patients, which is important for the state, but it also actually generates additional revenue by being able to manage more patients. And so that's really the long-term game for HSC, and the challenge that HSC had is it's a couple years out rather than right now. And when it is done, they'll have HSC will have to hire the staff, train the staff, and get them spun up, if you will. But the clinical revenues are certainly going to be a key answer to that. It's just that that's a couple years out with a new hospital tower. I should mention as well that where the academic side of the house, some of us can create additional revenue by raising tuition. That's not super helpful in HSC because it's such a small fraction. And equally, you might think, well, HSC could raise revenue by raising the costs of medical care, but in fact, the costs of medical care are set by Medicare, Medicaid, and largely the major insurance carriers. And so there's not a whole lot of flexibility there either. And so volume becomes the primary answer.
Thank you for that.
If I could address a question from Heather in the chat. Yes, state laws do differ with regard to with the way that labor laws are set up and the way that negotiations are set up.
Any other questions, colleagues? There's a second page. If you're on the second page, use the icon if you need to raise your hand. Hearing none. Thank you, Provost Holloway. Thank you, President Stokes. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Finney.
You all take care.
Okay. Okay. All right, colleagues, the next item on our agenda is my report. I only have a few things that I want to share. The first and probably most important is that today the Regents approved policy, faculty handbook policy C07. So that's a long time coming. Thank you to Nancy and her team, especially to Carol Stevens, who I know she's not with us, but she did a lot of work. Nancy, thank you so much for everything that you've done to help us get that done. We are going to have to turn our attention to C70, F100, and other policies that we'll probably want to think through what's the best position for us as a faculty senate. As you know, we are in the midst of faculty senate elections from around the colleges and the like. But we also need people's names in the hat for COG. There's one position open for COG. I believe 6 positions open on AF&T. So please share that information with our colleagues, and certainly if any of you are interested in doing something like that, especially if you're thinking about rotating off, or if you are rotating off but want to continue to serve, we need good people on those two committees. So please share that and let folk know. We will also, as soon as we finish with the elections for senators, we'll be looking for a faculty senate president-elect. Hopefully, we'll have a good slate of candidates for this coming election cycle. I'm looking forward to working with whoever emerges from that election. And again, if any of you are interested and want to talk to me offline about the expectations for it, the time commitment for it, if you have any questions about it, I'm happy to share my thoughts with you. It has been a very rewarding service opportunity for me. I highly recommend it, but it is hard. It's not easy, and nor should it be. But looking forward to working with hopefully one of you over the next year to get ready for the coming year. For the remainder of the semester, unless there are significant heartburn, we'll continue to meet online this semester. We'll have our first face-to-face semester probably in August. We'll have our retreat and some other things over the summer that you'll be getting information about. We've talked about the 7.12% salary increase. And I want to, publicly say to Chris and all the other members of the union, thank you for the hard work that you put in to make that happen. And also, I think there are some people who might have been naysayers who didn't believe that that would be possible. I count myself as one of those people who did not think that we would see significant raises, and I stand very corrected publicly about that. And so I'm very thankful, Chris, to you, Matias, Ernesto, other people who've worked so hard to make that go. I'm putting together a working group on academic freedom, an academic freedom statement, we mentioned this last time, having to do with a statement about whether or not the state legislature should be weighing in on our curriculum. What's the most effective or most appropriate way, if at all, for that to happen outside of the core curriculum. So if anyone is interested in that, I have a slate of people already that I plan to ask, but if someone's really passionate about that and wants to join the group, reach out to me offline, and I'll add you to that group of people. Any questions for me, colleagues, before we go on in the agenda? Okay, no questions. Then we'll move on to the next item in our agenda, which is our consent agenda. Colleagues, we have one item on our consent agenda. It is a Form C from the Curricula Committee. Do we have anything to pop up to show folk there, Rick?
It's multiple Form C.
Okay, can we pop those up, please? Okay, hold on. Let me check something for a second. And Rick, can you assure me that none of the things that we're going to have as action items are actually in the consent agenda?
This core course this is just a copied list of the curricula forms in the system. So this 2949 and the barbering 2974 are outside of it. They're separate. They have their own items. And so does the material child health, because it's a new certificate.
Uh-huh.
So all of those are regular action items.
Okay, none of those are appear in the consent agenda. Correct?
Yes, they do. They're listed on the master list of curricula.
Okay, then colleagues, I ask to suspend the orders of the day. Can I have unanimous consent to do that? Thank you. What we're going to do then is we don't want to have the consent. We don't want to approve the consent agenda that has things on it that are action items within the actual meeting. So I'm going to ask that we move the consent agenda down to just before we get to the academic calendar. So it would become item number 10, which means we would move all the other items up. Colleagues, can I have unanimous consent for that change? Hearing no objections, the next item on our agenda will be our new undergrad Gen Ed core course, Digital Music Production and Design. Peter, are you here with us?
Yes, hi.
Hi, Peter.
So, thanks for having me. I'll try to be quick, and apologies if my line is choppy at all. So a lot of recent and current students have been asking for music production courses at UNM, particularly as the interdisciplinary arts degree has been blooming. We've been getting more and more requests, but one of the major problems we've had is addressing limitations of our physical facilities, frankly. But so I've been looking at options and talking with professionals in the commercial music industry, and I think there's a real opportunity for us to teach music tech towards the home studio, by which I mean making music with digital and analog material all within your laptop. So in conjunction with moving in this new direction, I wanted to have a class that could appeal campus-wide and get students who have this interest started down the path of music production. And more than just a foundational course, I think music production is a great platform for students to think about how they can creatively create meaning. So for this class, we're focusing on one of my favorite projects, which is using music creation in a digital audio workstation to underscore a spoken text recording of the student's choice. So they choose a text they feel really strongly about and make a plan for how they want that sound design to enhance that text. And so then we can use audio learning and those tools to create a sound design to amplify that meaning and help it land emotionally. And around that project, we can build a lot of good discourse and small group collaboration, which is focused on students helping each other carry out that aesthetic intention. So anyway, that's kind of the idea.
Okay, wonderful. Colleagues, this is an action item. Is there any discussion? If there is no question, I imagine that we are ready for the question. If we're ready for the question, then Rick, please go ahead and post the poll. This is an approval of the new UG Gen Ed course digital music production and design. This will be a Form C.
Okay, it passes unanimously, 31-4-0 against.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter, for your time. Appreciate it. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Colleagues, the next item on our agenda is the new undergraduate certificate for maternal child health from the Health Science Center. Pamela Cedillo is going to help us through that. Pamela, are you with us?
I am, and actually I'm going to defer this over to Dr. Thomas, Tammy Thomas. She is actually the lead of this program and will be doing the presentation.
Colleagues, ask unanimous consent to recognize our colleague, Dr. Thomas. Thank you. Dr. Thomas?
Hello, everyone. We are proposing a certificate and a minor in maternal and child health through the College of Population Health. At this point, we are proposing a certificate at the undergraduate level, and we are in the process of working on a graduate certificate in minor, which we hope to talk with you about in the near future. Students who are enrolled at the College of Population Health will be able to receive a certificate in MCH, and any students from other disciplines will be able to get a minor in MCH through the College of Population Health. Our goals are really to provide interdisciplinary training in MCH and public health for undergraduate students in multiple disciplines. We really want to have a special focus on students from diverse, underserved, and underrepresented backgrounds, particularly those matching the makeup of those living here in New Mexico. So we hope to recruit, engage, and retain undergraduate students from diverse and underrepresented backgrounds to really provide leadership in MCH here in New Mexico. As many of you likely know, we typically rank 49th or 50th in terms of child well-being. So this program would really be helpful to the state and to population public health professionals. So our goal is to really provide interdisciplinary leadership, and we will focus on formal coursework, have folks attend workshops, conferences, and benefit from mentoring. We hope to recruit students working professionals from our communities around the state to create a well-trained workforce. And again, really focusing on those at need and at-risk communities. So this is a 12-credit MCH certificate or minor. We will be offering 4 3-credit courses that are listed here: Introduction to Maternal and Child Health, and then 3 seminars that will focus on various topics. Students will also be eligible to receive a certificate in interprofessional education through the UNM Health Sciences program. We've been working collaboratively with the IPE program to be able to offer both certificates and have students interact through the IPE program. So our goal is to really provide students with a solid foundation in maternal and child health, The learning objectives that we are using are in line with the MCH leadership competencies developed through HRSA, the Maternal and Child Health Bureau. And I've just listed what some of those are here if people were interested. And these are the competencies that programs around the country are using, particularly those that are funded through HRSA MCH training grants. And that's all I have to share.
Great. Colleagues, this comes to us as an action item. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I assume the group is ready for the question. Rick, can we post the poll? Colleagues, this is an action item for the new undergraduate certificate, Maternal Child Health from the Health Science Center.
Okay, it passes 28 for, 1 against, and 2 abstain.
Colleagues, that Form C passes. Tammy, thank you very much for presenting. Panelists, thank you also. Congratulations. Colleagues, the next item on our agenda is a new undergraduate certificate in barbering. I believe Matthew Mingus is here to talk with us about this.
Yes, I am.
Hello,
Can you hear me?
Matthew. I can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is a 37 credit hour certificate in barbering that the Gallup branch is proposing. It's proposed, or it was proposed initially by faculty, our cosmetology faculty. We are splitting up our current cosmetology barbering certificate into 2, and this is because of state licensure requirements. So in cosmetology, they require a certain number of hours in manicuring, and in barbering, they require a certain number of hours in shaving and stropping. We currently combine those 2 things, and it makes it difficult for some of our students to complete their licensure because they're taking course credits that they don't necessarily need for that licensure. Sometimes they will leave us to get licensure without completing their degree. And to stop that, our faculty asked to split them into 2. Cosmetology is currently being revised, and we're asking for this barbering program to be created. So that's what they asked me to present to you today.
Colleagues, do we have any questions for Dr. Mingus? Hearing no questions.
I have a question. My apologies. A little slow. So I'm not an expert on this, and for the maternal child health certificate, that was 12 hours, and now for barbering, it's 37 hours.
Yeah.
Does anyone have a perspective on how many credit hours is appropriate to get a certificate, or is there a wide range depending on other factors?
So I can answer. On our campus, there's a wide range of certificates. We have 8 credit hour certificates, 10-hour certificates. This one's a little bit higher. Usually we try to keep them under 30, but it's 37 because of the number of clock hours required by the state.
And I just want to answer to that, if I may, too. I believe the UNM requirement for a minimum certificate is 15 credit hours. So
Is 15 and the other one we just passed was 12?
right, when I went to set up a certificate, they told me what that was the minimum requirements. I don't know how we get one of 12.
Okay.
Hi. So the certificate requirements are actually different for branches, undergraduate Albuquerque campus, and then graduate programs. And a considerable amount of work has been done to try to clarify the requirements for the certificates, and that can be found in the current catalog. So the barbering certificate is actually in line with the number of credit hours for a professional certificate in career and technical education at a branch campus.
I should also add that our curriculum committee, led by Christine DeLucas, they'll check those kinds of things as part of the bona fide process to make sure that there are the minimum requirements being met for that. Christine, are you with us? Do you have anything to say about that?
Yes, Vinny, I'm here, and that's correct. We do also, on the clinical side, some of the people that are obtaining certificates are accredited through other for other requirements. So you might have somebody who already has a degree in a particular area and they're just adding on to that. So the certificate requirements may be less and the number of hours per credit hour may be different. So the number of hours in on the HSC side are usually around 50 hours per credit hours, and they may be different elsewhere. So we do look at each of those separately.
Thank you, Christine. Colleagues, do we have any other questions? Larissa?
Yeah, I was just curious, how does the barbering certificate affect the other certificate that you're splitting away from? Does that put a pause on folks being able to get that other certificate?
No, they can currently get the certificate right now. While we're revising that certificate currently, because they need more manicuring hours from what we recently revised, you can remain in that current cosmetology program and graduate now fine. And if we create the barbering, they can switch over if they want to into barbering, or they would be able to stay in the current program and complete if that's what they wanted to do. So it wouldn't really have any impact other than giving students a different choice.
Any other questions, colleagues? Hearing none, we'll call the question. Unless we've already put that up. We haven't, right?
Not yet.
Okay. Again, colleagues, this is a Form C for a new undergraduate certificate in barbering.
Okay, we have 30 approve, 0 do not approve, and 3 abstentions.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, colleagues. That certificate that Form C passes. Thank you, Dr. Mingus. Good luck with that program.
Appreciate it.
Very good. Colleagues, we have an action item for the deletion of a certificate, the graduate certificate in law, environment, and geography. Associate Provost Cheek, I think, is going to help us do that.
Absolutely. And so the chair of the Department of Geology was not able to join us today. This is a program that was offered in the past in the Department of Geography. I'm sorry, I said geology. And it was offered when the faculty included several faculty who had degrees in law. That is no longer the case. The department has been working to sunset the courses and the degree, and the certificate for quite a while. Since inception of the certificate, only 2 students have actually chosen to complete it. So there does not seem to be demand, nor do there seem to be faculty, nor does there seem to be a specific need for this certificate to continue. So the request from the Department of Geography is to discontinue the program.
Great. Colleagues, this is an action item. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. Rick, can you go ahead and pop that up for us? Deletion of the graduate certificate in law, environment, and geography.
$29 approve, 0 do not approve, and there's 2 abstentions.
Got it. Thank you. So that request is approved. Colleagues, we find ourselves at item number 10 on our agenda, which is now our consent agenda. Understand that this is the modified consent agenda that does not include the items that we've already discussed. Are there any changes? Any questions? Our consent agenda is approved. Colleagues, the next item on our agenda is item number 11, the 10-year academic calendar approval. And do we have Sheila with us today?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Sheila. It's good to see you.
And good to see you as well. Thank you. Nice to be here. Rick, are you able to display that Excel spreadsheet that I sent you?
Yes.
Thank you. So what you are looking at, with the exception of the yellow colored line at the very bottom, is the existing 10-year academic calendar. The 2022 row will fall off in January, and then we will need to have an approved 2033 in place. I know that I always get asked about the spring break for Albuquerque Public Schools, so I am pre-armed with the knowledge that the 2023 APS spring break dates are March 20th through March 24th. And that's already what we have existing has previously been approved. So the only line that I am adding is that 2033 line. If you will look at those dates, you'll note that they pretty much mirror the dates for the 2022 row, with the exception of the summer calendar, the summer dates. The summer end date is 1 day shorter, and that is because our president this time around has graciously given us an extra day to celebrate the 4th of July, which has extended our summer term. We cannot predict whether that will be the case in 2033. And so I've just gone with a standard prognostication, and I'm asking your approval.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I'm seeing that the misalignment of APS and UNM spring break affects student, faculty, and staff, because we have an increasing number of students who have kids in APS, and certainly faculty and staff. So I wonder, has there ever been discussion, or how can we go about trying to align this so that parents don't have to choose between taking time off, from work to take care of kids or having a vacation? Why can't this be aligned? Why is it such a challenge?
So there are a couple of reasons, Larissa and Sheila. I'll ask you to chime in here in a second. One has to do with the APS testing schedule. And so the way and when they test just does not doesn't align with our calendar, which is set 10 years out. So our calendar is already set. APS would need to adjust their calendar to match ours, but their testing dates often conflict with our spring break dates. So it wouldn't be UNM that would have to change. It would have to be APS. Sheila, am I right on that?
That is my understanding as well. The other things to consider in that are that UNM is required to report projected graduation dates out to the National Student Clearinghouse and in our enrollment reporting for years out. And that's part of the reason we ask you to approve a 10-year calendar. The other piece of the dates that we determine on is that our spring break falls neatly between the end of the first half and the end of the second half in the spring semester.
I guess if we're not restricted by testing though, like APS,
but
we're kind of caught in this cycle of having to approve 10 years ahead of time, how can we as a faculty senate work to altering that 10-year schedule? Because this seems to be a problem year after year.
It's not the 10-year schedule, it's the 4-year schedule out for the clearinghouse data. So if we want to be funded by the federal government, we have certain reporting requirements as an institution, including our IPEDS data, a lot of different things that we have to project out several years ahead of when APS is making their schedule. So our schedule, essentially by law and precedent, has to be set before APS is setting their schedule. And also that APS's scheduled or semester doesn't perfectly align with our semester in terms of the number of days that have gone through a semester where you meet a midpoint. But when I've talked to APS about it, it's always been the real problem for us is testing, and the standardized testing that the state requires, et cetera. And then ACT and SAT prep stuff. So it's not that we haven't. We have actually tried to see if there was a way to align them, but it's just a couple of things that line up against it. Because I've got kids that are in high school, and I'm like, hey, why can't we just sit down at the table and figure this out? But it's just more complex than that. So, okay, all right. Bad.
She just needs the insurance.
May I just ask a follow-on question, Finney? Would that be okay?
Yes. Hold on for Cash. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Do you have access to the agenda?
Yes, sir.
I've got a family situation that I have to take care of. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Cash, but can you finish up for me, please?
Yeah, you betcha. Hope everything's okay.
Yeah, we're on item 12. Item 11. All right. Sorry, everyone.
All right. Take care, Finney. Caroline, I'll turn it back over to you for your question.
Okay, thank you. Just kind of following up on what Larissa was asking. I haven't been at UNM for too many years, but it seems to me that the APS spring break, except for that one glorious year, is always 1 week after UNM's spring break. And I'm just wondering, would it be possible to move ours back, even though it kind of disrupts the neat split of our spring semester? I think for a lot of faculty, it would really be pretty awesome to have that aligned. Has that been discussed? Or, do we have data to, know more than just my observation about the when APS's spring break usually falls relative to UNM's?
I do not have data. I can tell you that in the years that I've been presenting the calendar, this is always a topic of discussion, and that's why I come with those dates for you. I don't honestly know what the answer would be.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheila. Yeah, this is certainly a complex issue that we've been discussing, certainly throughout my time here at UNM.
Can I add one thing here?
Certainly.
Kristen Barker in sociology. It's more than just a tidy. It's more than just a tidy midpoint. There are courses that are taught first half of the semester and second half of the semester. We do them often in our department, sociology, for a variety of reasons. So if you're in an 8-week semester, it's unclear how we would do that if we moved spring break by 1 week. I recognize it would be convenient for family vacations and family care issues, but I think it's more complicated by the 8-week semester options that some students take.
Thank you, Kristen. Do we have any other further discussion? And Kristen, I see your hand up. Is that from before? Okay, looks like it was from before. All right, so hearing no further discussion, Rick, can we please pop this up for a vote? And please let me know when we have a count.
Okay, we have 22 approve, 4 do not approve, and 4 abstain.
Okay, so colleagues, it sounds like our 10-year calendar dates are indeed approved. Thank you. Colleagues, moving forward in our agenda, I apologize, I wasn't prepared to take over and wasn't watching as closely as I should have been. I believe we are on to number 12.
Yes.
Okay, so it looks like for this, I am turned over to Pamela Cheek. Pamela.
Hi, everybody. I have good news, which is a nice thing to be able to share. When I walked into my role as interim associate provost at the time, and now I'm the associate provost, one of the first things I learned was that our curriculum flow platform was laboring and overwhelmed, and that we had a lot of challenges in terms of moving curriculum forward in a smooth and responsive fashion, partly because of our technology. And the other thing I learned was that the catalog that we use is essentially a glorified PDF. And so for the last several years, I've been working very closely with IT and also with Office of the Registrar to figure out how we can, and also with the Faculty Senate Curriculum Committee, and in particular, Dr. DeLucas, to figure out how we can, in fact, bring on a new curriculum flow and catalog platform. And I'm really excited to tell you that we've done it, that we're going to have this available to us. The new curriculum flow platform will be up and running and open and available probably by the end of this August. And then we'll have that curriculum flow platform will feed into building our brand new catalog. So let me tell you a little bit more about it, and then I'm going to pass things over to our folks in the registrar's office who can tell you a little bit more about the particulars. So this is a multi-year project we've been working on. We're aware that one of the most important things that the Faculty Senate does is, and that faculty do, is engage in oversight and creation of the curriculum. And we're aware that it's been very difficult to fill out forms and then move them through multiple stages of approval. And that's just kind of been an endemic issue. And I'm sure many of you have experienced the frustration of, where's my form? Who's looking at it now? Where did it get stuck? So we've contracted with Quali, an external vendor that works primarily with educational institutions and that actually engages educational institutions in improving the product. We've contracted with Quali to build us a new curriculum flow platform and a new catalog format. The whole project, again, has been going on for a number of years as we've been trying to kind of find the right vendor and the right solution for UNM. It's actually, the Quali platform is something that is within our means. So for the first the total for the first several years, if you take the total for the first 3 years of the adoption, it will be about $193,000 for us to take this on. So it's more expensive in the first year because we have to transition everything. And what you'll find when you're using the new curriculum flow platform is that the forms will be kind of pre-filled with existing curriculum. And so you won't have to do that copy and pasting and comparing that you've had to do in the past. A lot of the material will be pre-filled. And then there will be active reminders for folks at various levels of the approval phase to engage in approval. You won't have to search within, go to the VPN and go in and, fumble your way through the forms and try to find your form. It will actively engage you in approving. So that's curriculum flow. We think it's going to be a lot easier for faculty and departments to submit curriculum, and also for us to manage things like the Form Cs that you just looked at. In the past, we haven't been able to include specifics about courses on a Form C when you were in the process of reviewing a program form. Now, all the material that's connected to a new concentration or a new degree or a new program, we'll be able to include that in there, which is super exciting. The catalog is going to be really, I think, transformative for us in addressing our mission of making it possible for our community members and especially our students to access information about what we do in our academic programs, what resources we offer within our resource centers and across the university, and who we are more generally. We've never had a searchable catalog in the sense of being able to put in search words. So a student, for instance, could with the new catalog, put in the search terms social justice or mechanical engineering or global and national security or just global. And the catalog will kick out suggestions relative to those search terms. Or the thing that we all wanted to be able to do a couple of minutes ago, look up the information about the requirements for a certificate. Well, you would be able to type into the search, certificate, and it would kick out for you the information about certificate. The catalog will also be hyperlinked. So we've had some real challenges around it being impossible if, say, a course was cross-listed to go to the course description in the originating department, or say with general education, you can look at the course numbers currently for general education in the catalog, but you can't actually see the course description because that's lodged in the department that offers that particular course. Now we'll have hyperlinks. We'll also have the ability to have basically sub-catalogs. So the branch catalogs for all of the UNM branches, the HSC catalog, and the law catalog will all be part of one greater UNM catalog. So we're really excited about, again, the access for students in particular, but for all of this, for all of us that this will involve. In addition to those features of it being searchable, it having hyperlinks to departmental websites, it having hyperlinks to information within our various student affairs and services areas. In addition to all of that, there also will be a feature that allows us to list within the catalog two things that are really important for our students and that our first generation students in particular often miss, just don't know about. One of those is our degree plans. Many of you may know about degrees.unm.edu that lists suggested, not required, but suggested degree plans for students. We'll be able to link directly to those degree plans. That's the sort of pathway that's really important to first generation students, to students who aren't familiar frequently with how to navigate college. In addition to showing your requirements for your degree programs within the catalog, there'll be a direct link to these pathway descriptions for 4-year versions of a degree and also for 5-year versions of a degree. And you may remember that the average time to degree for UNM students is about 4.6 years. So it's appropriate to include the 5-year degree version as well. So that'll be hyperlinked in. And then one more thing that's really important for our students is the ability to find out about fellowships, grants, study abroad, internships, and jobs on campus that are directly linked to their academic interests. There will be a section of the catalog at the bottom of degree programs where we'll list opportunities, and it will be possible for a department to plug in information about opportunities that are available for students who are connected to the department or connected to the college or school in some way. So a lot more accessibility, and we hope more transparency, fewer opportunities for people to get lost in this very complex and wonderful institution, but complex, right? It's hard for students to find information, and it's sometimes hard for all of us to find information. So I'm going to pass things over to Associate Registrar Michael Rain to tell us a little bit more about the catalog and the curriculum flow, and also to Anna Gay, who they've both been working really heavily on this. But I also want to thank in particular Corey Jordan, who's done a ton of work keeping this moving forward, and we're right on schedule. Nancy Middlebrook for her contributions to oversight and to thinking about policy and process, and of course Christine DeLucas, who's had a really influential role in making sure that faculty voice was present throughout this. I'll add too that we had a very representative and engaged process bringing together multiple stakeholders as we looked for the right platform, and Quali was kind of hands down the choice after we examined many and evaluated many different possible platforms for curriculum flow and catalog. But I'll pass it over to Michael Rain.
Hi, everybody. Rick, will I be able to share screen?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'd like to show you is the University of Utah's Quali catalog, show you some of the features that they have, and then my colleague Anna will take you through what's we're working on in progress for our catalog or curriculum workflow. So can everybody see the University of Utah General Catalog? It's on your screen. Okay, so this is the front page of the catalog. And we'll go right to one thing that Dr. Cheek mentioned. We'll go to an undergraduate section. And let's see, let's choose history. So this is the layout of the history page, the Bachelor of Arts. So you have your department, you have your contact information, your minimum degree hours, the major hours, graduation requirements, honors requirements, and then the list of the degree. But this has two other features that we don't currently enjoy. One that Dr. Cheek just mentioned, which is the sample 4-year plan. And that's what it looks like. And the other one, which we could also employ, is learning outcomes for the program, which is also not in our current catalog. And I think these are both would be very useful items to have in the catalog. It's a very clean, straightforward presentation, and your left pane always gives you a place to navigate back to. So if you suddenly had an urge to see the president's message, which we have not had in our catalog for 13 years. So I'm very excited actually to get this back into our catalog. This will take you to their president and there's various links, a lot of marketing materials here. And this is just something we've been missing. And so we've begun working with the president's office on developing the president's message. Let's go back to programs. Right now, you can go, it's sorted right now by the college. So let's see. Go to the College of Business and you'll see a list of all of their programs under their business college, for example. If we go to their MBA, again, it's a very simple, straightforward presentation. This is the description of the purpose of the program. There's links again to various things like the executive MBA, which is something we have, of course. There's the professional program. There's the online. So it's all right here. It's all very straightforward. Here are the degree requirements. Let's go to their course. So by clicking on that, I go right to the course. It tells me everything I need to know, the course description, what kind of course it is, if there are prerequisites for it, et cetera, et cetera. Again, it's not something that we currently are able to do in our catalog. Let's see. Scroll down, and again, they have learning outcomes. Of course, graduate programs don't have degree plans, so you wouldn't have that for those programs, but they do have learning outcomes for the programs. Let's show you what policies and resources look like. Again, if you want to see your academic standards, you click there and you get you'll get their list of academic standards, advising contacts like that. This button will send you back here. General education, bachelor degree again. And then it gives you like, okay, I want to see what their general education courses look like. And it gives you their requirements, which of course are different than ours. They also have a link to the class schedule to let you know what kind of arts and science courses are available. And this one has learning outcomes too. Let's see. they are able to load up the student code, the student handbook. Student services gives you a variety of links. You can go to their museums, and these links send you to additional websites. So in general, that's kind of like what we've all appreciated about looking at the University of Utah's catalog was just how clean it looks, how I think very straightforward, accessible, as Dr. Cheek had mentioned before. Just a very nice presentation. And then on this left pane, you can see all of their colleges, and you can go to there and get more information. Again, who's the dean, the different departments, different centers and institutes that they offer degrees and programs. So that's a quick view of the University of Utah catalog. And I can put that in the chat if you would like to see the explore the catalog for yourself. And that sent me somewhere else. Didn't intend to go there. So let's go back. So I'm just curious if there's an area that somebody would like me to click on. Let me know. Otherwise, I'll just put the link in the chat and you can feel free to explore. Any questions or anything? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Anna. Anna's going to show you what our current course development looks like, what you would be engaging with when you enter into the quality course curriculum system.
And I'm just going to pop in really quickly, basically to just repeat what I put in the chat. It was a really good question from Dr. Lassiter. So the curriculum flow platform will be rolled out in late August. It will include material from the current catalog, which you have the opportunity to change as you build curriculum. That curriculum flow platform will feed creation of the next catalog. So our 2022-23 catalog, the next one up, is actually a static old style catalog, what you're used to. But curriculum flow, this new curriculum flow, is going to allow us to build the 2023-24 dynamic catalog that will be similar to what Associate Registrar Michael Rain has been sharing you. So we'll start building that catalog beginning in late August using the new curriculum flow. Sorry about that. Thanks, Anna.
Thanks, Dr. Cheek. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Michael, will you stop your screen share?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm trying to figure out where I do that. Anybody have any clue where I do that in Zoom?
Michael, it should be at the bottom where it'll say stop sharing. It might be at the bottom or top.
Should be at the top on the right-hand side, a red stop sharing.
I'll boot you off.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so for the purposes of this demonstration, I will be impersonating Dr. DeLucas so that you'll see what a typical faculty or staff user might see when they go into the curriculum management system. One of the features that I think is the biggest improvement over our current system is that it's got a really clean interface and you'll see action items on your homepage. You'll also receive email notices that you can actually click a link to access a form rather than having to go through VPN. So it will be a little bit easier for approvers to know when they have action items that they need to take a look at. We don't have all of the features built out yet. So today I'll just focus on courses because that's the most complete. We have a brand new course form that takes most of the content that's on our existing course form, but it optimizes it in a way that makes it easier for users to fill out forms. And we're hoping that by reducing user error, we have fewer mistakes and fewer forms getting sent back.
So for example, our colleges and departments are nested. So if you work in colleges of arts and sciences, you'll see departments associated with that college. We've also incorporated a campus feature so that we can route the workflow appropriately when we have items being added to our branch catalogs. We'll also have the ability to link to other existing forms. So if you're developing an entire new program with lots of new courses, you'll be able to link those forms together, even if they're in a draft form and haven't been approved yet. So most of the fields should look pretty similar. The areas where we start to see a really different look, and I think a big improvement, will be in the prerequisites and co-requisites. So instead of manually typing and then your form maybe getting sent back because your prerequisites are not clear, users will be able to select prerequisite courses, test scores, and other requirements from the existing catalog. We'll also retain the current restrictions. So if your program is restricted to your students in, say, the PhD program or something like that, that information will still be here. One area where we see a lot of forms returned is that syllabi are missing student learning outcomes and course goals. So we've incorporated those as questions to prompt the user to, one, check that that information is on their syllabus, and two, make it easier for our committees to find. Another common issue is missing sample course schedules. So again, we're prompting users to double check that that information is actually contained on their syllabus. And then instead of having a document upload section for your duplication statements and budget implementations, users can just type that in. So that's what the form looks like. I'll backtrack a little bit and take a look at courses. We've loaded in a few courses as samples to work with. When you come to the landing page, you might think, wow, this is a little bit overwhelming. One of the nice features about Quali is that we'll be able to filter courses by college and department. So right now I'm looking at the American Studies courses. To make a change to an existing course, instead of having to fill out an entire Form A, you'll make the change directly to the course itself. So when a user selects a course, they will have the option to propose changes to a course. So this could be as simple as changing the course number, or changing the entire course description, student learning outcomes, grade mode, whatever changes you may need. They're all made in the course record. Once a user submits changes, they'll be able to see the status both on their form and in their proposals. So it adds an extra layer of transparency and ease of use that we don't have in the current system. I know we're getting close to time, so I'm gonna stop here and we'll turn it back to the Faculty Senate for questions.
Thank you all for that presentation. This seems very, very exciting, very interactive. I am not seeing any questions, so thank you all for that information item. Colleagues, you may have be keeping an eye on the time as I am. However, I am very anxious to hear the COVID-19 update, especially considering the changes with masking policy. So I am going to ask for unanimous consent that we extend our meeting today. That said, I do realize some of you will most likely need to be on your way. So Dr. Pitcher, I'm hoping you can stay on with us and I will turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you all, and thank you for sticking it out. I will try and be brief, and we'll try to get you out on time or as close to time as we can. Okay. All right, so I'll just go through some of the numbers very quickly. Over the last month, we've seen a dramatic reduction in the number of new daily cases occurring within the state of New Mexico. This epidemic curve gives you a good idea of the nature of the recent spike, which was very brief, but very significant in terms of its numbers. But now we're down to daily case numbers throughout the entire state, about 120, 130 cases per day on average. And that's significantly down from where we were a month ago. More importantly is the impact of those numbers on our healthcare delivery systems around the state. And this graph shows the number of hospitalized cases throughout the state. And if you look over on the right-hand side, you can see that we're now hovering right above 100 hospitalized cases in the state. That's significantly down from where we were just a month and a half ago when we had a little over 700 cases at our peak of the Omicron surge. So there's been considerable relief of pressure on our healthcare delivery systems just based upon the reduced COVID numbers. As has been the case all along, hospitalization risk increases with age, and it increases with lack of vaccination or lack of booster access. So nothing there has really changed at all. The vast majority, in fact, 100% of our cases now in New Mexico are all related to the Omicron variant. As a reminder, we didn't see the Omicron variant at all until mid-December, just 3 months ago. And Omicron rapidly replaced what was then the dominant Delta variant, and did so consistent with what it's done around the globe. As of yesterday, there's a new subvariant of Omicron that is being considered a variant of concern. This is the BA.2 variant, also known as stealth Omicron. It's called stealth because it evades some of the PCR detection methodology with our current testing, but it's essentially no different than the BA.1 variant or Omicron as we've known it. It's more transmissible, but it does not carry with it a high morbidity or mortality. Most cases are pretty insignificant from a clinical standpoint. But this new variant does represent over 75% of cases globally. And it's the variant that's driving rapid increase in cases in several Asian countries, Australia, much of Europe, including the United Kingdom. Right now, about 23% of cases in the USA are related to this BA.2 variant, mostly more on the East Coast and not so much here in the Southwest yet. It's unclear if we're going to see the same kind of spike in numbers that they've seen in Europe or in some of the Asian countries, just given that we had a pretty significant Omicron surge here in the United States, and it's thought that we still have quite a bit of residual immunity from that surge, and there's no reason to think that infection with BA.1 is anything other than protective against reinfection with BA.2. But it's still something worth keeping an eye on. Overall, the strategy for managing Omicron and managing COVID is really moving away from the lockdown and quarantine strategies and mask mandates to focus more on assuring complete vaccination and booster administration as we can, and a focus on increasing the supply chain of many of the emerging therapeutics, which are actually quite effective at reducing risk for significant morbidity and for hospitalization. Our census within the UNM health system is coming down nicely. Our overall COVID census now represents less than 5% of the total census in our health system. A month ago, when I was speaking with you, our COVID census was already coming down. We were hovering around 60 patients in our system. As of today, we're down to 17 patients. So that's bringing with it quite a bit of relief, at least from COVID. But our overall occupancy still remains exceptionally high, and it's with continued demand for delayed care and non-COVID related services that's been put off for the last 2 years. So even though we're not seeing a lot of COVID now, we're still getting hammered with just a lot of unmet healthcare demand. So we're still continuing to limit transfers in as best we can, trying to keep a lid on our total census so that we're not overwhelmed. And we're starting to slowly reintroduce some of the non-urgent or emergent surgical cases that have been delayed. And we're trying to get our occupancy down to more manageable levels. But in spite of all those activities, we're still running well over 100% occupancy. Our total census within the health system today is a little over 640 patients between 2 hospitals. And that's just not sustainable in the long run. Otherwise, we're continuing to demobilize all of our COVID dedicated resources. And we're trying to, start to focus more on managing the current non-COVID related demand and our high capacity status. And as a public health official, I wish I could attribute it to the right individual, but it was recently commented that, we as a people may seem to be done with the pandemic, but the pandemic is certainly not done with us. And that's kind of the approach we're taking here at UNM. And that is to keep our eye on the ball, but also try and re-engage with other priorities for healthcare delivery. And with that, I'm really happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. And we did have one question in the chat that was addressed on your slides already. Colleagues, do we have any questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Dr. Fisher. Moving forward on our agenda, number 14, public comment. Rick, do we have any public comment?
No.
All right. So with that, I will dismiss. Thank you all for sticking with us past 5. Have a wonderful weekend. And enjoy the rapidly changing weather out there. Take care.